Good evening and welcome to the December 18th, 2023 special city council meeting beginning at 5:06. This time we'll call to order, and could I get a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Meyer.
Here.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Here.
Councilmember Orlemans.
Here.
Mayor Bryant.
Here.
And let the record reflect that Councilmember Pearson is absent.
Could join with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time we will open public comments. I'll turn it to you, Margaret.
At this time, the public may comment on items that are listed on the closed session agenda. If you're participating via Zoom please raise your hand to speak under public comment. If you're in person, please file a speaker card with the city clerk. We'll take public comments from those participating in the chambers. Then those participating via Zoom, your microphone will be muted if you speak on items that do not pertain to this agenda item. And we received no written public comments on this item. I have no speaker cards in the chambers and no hands are raised in Zoom.
Thank you. At this time, we'll close public comments. Do I have a motion to recess to closed session?
So moved. Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are in recess. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the City Council meeting of December 18th, 7 p.m. We are reconvening into open session. There is nothing to report out from closed session. At this time, we'll move into business item G1, interview and consider selection of applicants and by motion make appointments to the Planning Commission. And now it's time to hold the interviews for planning commissioners. And we will start with explaining the process that we will follow tonight. Alexis, you're on the other side tonight.
I'm adjusting too. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. The item tonight is to interview Planning Commission applicants for the 2 seats that will be vacant at the end of this year. I believe there are 5 applicants now.
We do have 5 applicants
Yes.
now. One withdrew
Yes.
earlier this afternoon.
So we have 5 applicants to interview this evening. The council shared their questions with the clerk ahead of time, and we will be bringing the applicants out one by one. They are in the back in the closed session chambers without the meeting being televised, so they will hear the questions for the first time when they come out here one at a time. They are welcome to remain in the audience after their time is up if they would like. So this evening we will be beginning with
I think with public comment to start, and
Yes.
then
the first applicant after that.
Okay, at this time, we will open public comment. Margaret?
at this time, the public present in the chambers and on Zoom are permitted to address the city council on items G1. If you're participating via Zoom, please raise your hand to speak under public comment. If you're in person, please file a speaker card with the clerk. We'll take public comments from those participating in the chambers first, then those followed by Zoom. Your microphone will be muted if you speak on items that do not pertain to this agenda item or after the timer has expired. And we received no written public comments on this item prior to the meeting. I do have one in-person speaker card. I will call on Cinziana.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to start by saying choosing a candidate who, besides the fact that has extreme political views, active member of Turning Point USA, he has strong relationships with developers, landowners who are behind Measure L. This council also is supportive of affordable housing, while this candidate publicly expressed his opposition. His lack of experience poses a real risk for the city, and the personal connections I mentioned earlier could jeopardize the future of Innovation Center. Another thing I would like to mention, it's a public record that this individual called into one of the city council meetings while he was at work and apologizing he was late for his public comment because he was yelling at his employees. So I would like you to take that into consideration and think if we want to bring that kind of behavior and leadership style to our planning commission. Also, he explicitly expressed his opposition to Measure Q during his city council campaign, so I don't think he can be trusted to protect our open space that is treasured by a lot of our Brentwood residents. Also, I noticed a candidate affiliated with Chamber of Commerce on the list that you selected. It will be embarrassing for our city to end in a corruption scandal like we've seen in Anaheim. I am not inferring this candidate is corrupt, but as our assistant city attorney mentioned, we don't even want to give the impression of improper business practices. Considering the legal environment in California, it is imperative to select the best qualified candidates and not based on personal relationships. We need candidates who will not have to recuse themselves because of conflict of interest. We need all commissioners to participate since every vote is crucial when deciding for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Nicole.
Good evening. I feel like I'm coming up here to state the obvious, but sometimes I don't know how you guys are going to vote. Anita should be appointed again. She's got a good track record. She asks good questions, and it's clear that she has the best interest of Brentwood in mind. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional speaker cards in person. I do have one hand raised in Zoom. I'll call on Danny. Danny, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I echoed the young lady who spoke before. This really should be trying to fill the one seat. And that's only because um, uh, the gentleman decided not to run. I said this on a post. I think this current setup of planning commissioners is the best I've seen, at least in the 4 or 5 years that I've actively participated. But also, I can't recollect going through all my research if I've seen a arrangement of commissioners like the 5 we have currently. As I said, this really should be filling one vacancy. If there's any doubt about whether or not Anita should be considered, I can't even find the right sentence because it's just so, trying to describe, well, no, she's good, but I mean, this woman literally called in from a hospital to make her presence known, which is radically different than calling in on an airplane. But that's her dedication. That is her commitment to the city. And I'm not always in agreement with her or with all of the commissioners. It's that balance, though, was perfect for us. And going into 2024, I don't know who, I honestly don't know these other people. So, other than Braden, and in all honesty, part of me says, you ought to really consider him so he can find out how the city really works instead of all of um, the things that go through his mind, I believe, on how the city operates. As I said, I don't know the other people. Mr. Johnson was brought up and connected to the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know the gentleman, but there is a challenge if anyone, and that's whether it's any of the commissioners or you guys, have to bow out because of a potential conflict of interest. We've gone through that before. We really don't need to do that. And this is the opportunity to, this last group set the bar really high. I hope that the decision with the other person is what's best for the city. Thank you.
I have no additional hands raised and no additional speaker cards.
Thank you. At this time, then, we will close public comments, and we will invite the first applicant to come in. The applicant pool, of course, this evening was chosen at random through the city clerk, drawing their names in a random order. And so each applicant will be called upon and asked questions by each council member. And now we will open that process, and applicant number 1 is Anita Roberts. If you could have Dr. Roberts come in.
Do I come to the, okay, yeah. I have to get my glasses, excuse me. How cool is this being on the other side of the dais, Mr. Mayor?
Well, thank you so much for your application, Dr. Roberts. You've been through this process at least twice before, once in person and once on Zoom. And as always, you're much taller in person than you are on Zoom.
Yeah.
But the process is the same. Each council person will ask you a question. All questions will be asked exactly the same to each of the applicants. And you were chosen at random to begin first. And so the first council person to ask the question is Councilmember Mendoza.
Okay. Good evening. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. The state has passed over 100 housing bills since 2016. Of the bills that have passed in the last year, which is the worst one and why? And please elaborate on the bill and its direct impact on Brentwood residents.
Well, I would say that SB 10, if that is the most recent one I'm recalling, where we are now in a place that forces the Planning Commission to bypass its normal processes, which was to go through a process and kind of yield to the developer with density bonuses, waivers, concessions, and the like, kind of tying our hands, even eliminating, I believe it's CEQA, and just crowding us. So I would say that that is one that has presented one of the biggest problems for the city of Brentwood.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Vice Mayor Meyer.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Roberts, for coming and going through this process again. Could you explain your understanding of current state and local laws as they relate to housing affordability, environmental equity, and CEQA compliance? And the second part of that, and you can take this in whatever order you like, how do you personally believe affordable housing should be implemented in local projects?
So that's a lot. I would,
I can repeat if that would
yes,
help.
why don't we start with the first layer?
Okay. Could you please explain your understanding of current state and local laws as they relate to housing affordability, environmental equity, and CEQA compliance?
So it's my understanding that CEQA has kind of been removed in its entirety from this process as it relates to the Affordable Act, the housing affordability. There is a percentage, I believe it's 80-20, or I believe maybe it's even 10%. It's a sliding scale. And don't ask me all of these scales because there are quite a few, but it is a sliding scale. And my understanding, depending on the applicant's application, I would argue that our hands are tied. I don't know how else to put that to you, but that our hands are tied as it relates to the legislative mandates that are in front of us. We are now pressed with allowing, with the exception of the design review, that's probably our only authority to pass or accept just about every application that comes before us, with the exception of the design review. And so if you're asking me specifically about how that affects Brentwood, the design review is probably the only thing that we now are empowered to speak on. Mm-hmm. And that would have to do with the type of housing, the setbacks, how many windows. I heard very clearly some things that do need to be real specific in order for us to implement a design review. So I don't know if that answered the question,
Sure.
but
The second part, how do you personally believe affordable housing should be implemented in local projects?
oh, well, it has been an issue for me, the whole affordable piece, in that you've got low, you've got very, very low, and then you've got moderate. And what I find is that the majority of the homes that are being built under this new mandate, there are very few homes that are affordable, or as one would put, low, for people to actually afford. The majority of the homes that are being built under the Affordable Act are based on income, one's income here in Brentwood, and that's a problem because the income scale is quite high. So I see it as not meeting the real needs of folks that would like to stay in Brentwood, but can't afford to stay in Brentwood. It's just not enough.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Good evening.
Hi.
How you doing?
Okay.
Good. If you fundamentally disagree with the project presented to the Planning Commission, would you have a problem approving the project if state law requires it or it complies with, and it complies with the general plan for the city?
Oh, I don't have a problem saying no. I do understand that there are some conditions, and so I would say to you, to that question, that if there was a project that I did not feel was appropriate for the city of Brentwood, I would render a no vote and or would want to revisit conditions that perhaps might not be in the applicant's application at that time, to see if we could come to a reasonable understanding. And there's been a lot of that in this last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Dr. Roberts.
Hey.
How are you?
Okay.
So mine is fairly quick and easy. What would you describe as the top 3 priorities of the Planning Commission?
Certainly to listen to the heartbeat of the city of Brentwood and its residents. That's, to me, key. Follow the bylaws and or that's in the general plan. That's also very key. And to keep apprised of all the new laws and mandates that are upon us and seem to be quite fluid these days. You're welcome.
And the final question, Dr. Roberts, is please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
Oh. Well, for certain, to do our research. When we receive a packet, that's one of the first things that we are charged to do, is the research, to read, to consult with the planning department for things that we might not or need further clarification, to not break the Brown Act, and to allow the applicant, I believe, an opportunity to explain in detail why Brentwood and why now and why this project. So a responsibility to be clear is to know the codes and, as I indicated, to know that general plan. That's a big one.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You are certainly welcome to stay in with us tonight and listen to the rest of the applicants. But thank you very much for your answers. The next applicant on the list is Ahmad Tahiri. Good evening, Mr. Tahiri. Welcome. Thank you for your application for the Planning Commission. I'm going to explain quickly the process that all of our applicants are going to be following. Tonight, each of the council members will have a question for you, and each applicant will be asked exactly the same questions. And so, are you ready to begin?
Well, thank you, His Excellency, the Mayor, council members, Vice Mayor, and the rest of the team. I'm so excited, and I appreciate the opportunity given to me. I'm ready to respond to the questions.
Okay.
I'm on, just FYI, it's my third year in Brentwood, and I love the city. I love everything about the city as newcomer to the U.S., and yeah, I look forward to the questions now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mendoza.
I keep forgetting to turn
Good
that on.
evening.
Sorry. Good evening. For your first question. The state has passed over 100 housing bills since 2016. Of the bills that have passed in the last year, which is the worst and why? And please elaborate on the bill and its direct impact on Brentwood residents.
Can you repeat it once again? I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Of the housing bills that
Okay.
the state legislator has passed in
Sure.
the last year, which is the worst one and why? And please elaborate on the bill and its direct impact on Brentwood residents.
Well, thank you. I have to be very frank. I haven't gone through the bill. The reason I applied for this position is to enter into our city, serve in whatever capacity possible, and learn about different legislations, regulations, procedures, and contribute to whatever possible way based on my experiences from a different part of the world, from Afghanistan. That's where I'm coming from. I did serve the US government back home. I did serve Afghan government. My last appointment was Deputy Secretary for the Afghanistan Independent Land Authority. And my main role was to administer, manage state land, privately owned land, lease land, exchange land, transfer land, plus clearance of ownership, all those kinds of responsibilities. I had to oversee a number of directorates, land lease, land sale, cadastral survey, and titling. Dispute resolution, of course, one of the very important aspect when we talk about land property administration management. In addition to that role, during my service for the U.S. government, I'm a certified U.S. government COR, contracting officers rep, or agreement officers rep. I used to manage, administer huge contracts on behalf of U.S. government and your taxes. You used to send to Afghanistan. So I was one of the responsible, accountable person as COR to administer contracts. Main role of mine on behalf of U.S. government with USAID was, again, be the focal point for the mission in Afghanistan in regards to the areas of land property. I was the one who spent a lot of time on the expansion of the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. We managed to acquire land from the host government involved departments. So had different roles and responsibilities, and the main objective of me applying for this position is to learn and to contribute towards the city goals, objectives. I know expansion of the city is happening. I know population is increasing every single day in this city because of a lot of attractions of this beautiful city, great schools, great services, safety, of course. So there are challenges. I know the city team is working hard to respond to those challenges. I would love to be part of the team and contribute to whatever extent possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm sorry for the specific questions that, as newcomer, I'm still learning. So I'm sorry for that.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Tahiri. My question is, could you please explain your understanding of current state and local laws as they relate to housing affordability, environmental equity, CEQA compliance? And there's a second part of that, how do you personally believe affordable housing should be implemented in local projects? And you can start wherever you like, and I'm happy to repeat anything.
Thank you. Again, the question is very specific about regulations, legislations. But I did serve as mission environmental officer, deputy officer for the Afghanistan mission with the USAID. And I do understand what the processes, procedures related to environmental compliance look like, because we used to have the US government legislations. We had to make sure whatever projects we implemented in that country are in line with our legislations of the US government, federal government. So I did work for more than a year as deputy mission environmental officer for the largest mission in the world, I should say, the US government's largest mission with the biggest amount of dollars, every year we had. In relations to the other parts, of course, we do need to address the affordable housing portion in every single project. I believe it's a standard, as I heard from different people during my conversations, that every project has to have certain percentage of affordable housing in their projects. I believe, considering the number of low-income population in our city and in general in our state, we do need that part to be seriously considered and monitored. And this helps, of course, the low-income population to stand on their own with the support provided of housing specifically. That helps them, because we cannot keep the low-income population stay low income. We have to do something to make them able to move forward. I mean, to move towards self-reliance life in the country. So I believe that's a very important part of our housing initiatives in our city that has to be considered. Based on my perspective. The reason I'm saying that, because I do talk to, as newcomer, to majority of the people I talk, they're low income. I do talk to my own people who live in Antioch, Oakley, Brentwood, Concord, and different other parts of our state. I'm in contact with many people in East Coast because that was originally the place I was supposed to move, but there were certain issues, made me move. We call it Minister of Interior, and that's my wife. Because of her, I decided to come here. She got two sisters. So I did have opportunities in the East Coast to get a decent job, but I decided to make sure my wife doesn't go to depression, anxiety, and the kids enjoy. They do love this place, and they love the city, they love the school. So again, to end to your question, I'm a fast learner. I'm familiar with the legislation's procedures to be amended, regulations development. I used to lead these processes back home as deputy secretary. I used to sit with our, here you call it Congress, in Senate. I used to sit and talk to them. I used to justify different proposed, amendments to those legislations. I do have experiences of, those efforts. We'll be learning.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
If you fundamentally disagree with the project presented to the Planning Commission, would you have a problem approving the project if state law, if it complies with state law and complies with the general plan of the city of Brentwood?
If it is in line with the city plan, if it is in line with our bigger picture of the city, if it is in line with the state law, and no other major issues with different engaged departments of our city, because the Planning Commission or the Planning Department is not sole authorized to do everything in the city, because there are other departments engaged in the process of, execution of different plans, execution of different projects, monitoring different projects, different portions of projects monitored by different departments of our city. So we have to make sure in a participatory process, we do things. I believe we have to make sure before approving any kind of projects, we need to let different departments know, so that if we approve or disapprove, if we approve, we have to keep different departments in the loop, because there are different roles and responsibilities of different departments at different point of time for the implementation of that project. So that's why it has to be, if it's in line with the policies, regulations of the state and the city, and it is part of the plan of the city, I believe we won't be able to, terminate that kind of proposal. We may support that kind of project. But if it doesn't include as a priority for the city, we have to think different ways to do adjustments and amend that specific project so that we can make it in line with our priorities. Did I answer? Did I miss anything?
I think you got it, sir. Thanks.
If you'd like to repeat your question, if I have anything else to add, I would love to.
No, I think you got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Mr. Tahiri, and I'm coming right here. And happy 30th anniversary in the city of Brentwood.
Thank you so much.
My question is, what would you describe as the top 3 priorities of the Planning Commission?
Well, I believe we have to make sure we have the data about our land use and zoning of our city. What needs to be done where, and that normally should be available, and that kind of data should be updated time to time in order to be able to include our top priorities of our cities, I believe. That's number one. And we have to also analyze different huge projects, especially, to understand cost-benefit analysis of those projects, in our pipeline. We have to understand exactly what we are going to gain by implementing different activities on our priority list, and what are we going to lose. And of course, again, I emphasize on participatory processes and procedures. We have to engage all those different counterparts, and those beneficiaries, those contractors implementing different activities. So In addition to that, I believe we have to make sure we consider safety and security of our city when we plan different activities for our city. That has to be number one. We do have cities where residents complain a lot, and that is a big challenge for citizens. So safety, security has to be number one for our planning department. And affordability, of course. When we develop different projects, we have to make sure, the projects are affordable. They're not like crazy prices of housing that is going on right now in California, which is very, not easy for everyone to be able to become an owner of a house. In addition to that, we have to have different kinds of initiatives we have to understand what our needs are. The planning department, the planning commission, jointly, they have to come up with our priority needs to understand. And that is something I believe should happen frequently to understand what the priority needs are. And, yeah, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tahiri, this is the final question.
Yes, sir.
Please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
Planning Commission is a structure to, number one, I believe they have to understand what exactly the plan of the city look like. That's number one priority. They have to have the knowledge of different legislations, regulations existing in our city. The legislations of state, for example, that we follow, we do follow. The city regulations, the commission has to understand exactly how those documentations look like. That's number one. Number two, the planning commission has to understand exactly what the current picture of our city is, and that helps the commission to go through different applications or project proposals coming from different sources to review and to comment. They have to share their perspectives. They have to review whether they are in line with our policies, regulations, and are they in line with our city plan, zonings, and all those different land use planning, whether they are in line with those existing documentations approved by the city. So they have to make sure they follow all those existing documentation and the legislations and share their perspectives, share their comments about every single submission they receive and they have to be in close contact with the Department of Planning of the city, because they're the ones executing, they're the ones coming up with city plans, they're the ones overseeing or implementing different projects for our city. And all those urban sectoral departments, and rural sectoral departments, because we are in expansion right now. I see a lot of projects going on, housing projects and different other initiatives from our city, which is great, makes people happy seeing all those initiatives. So I believe there has to be strong communication, coordination within sectoral departments of the commission. And of course, His Excellency, the mayor, the vice mayor, and the council members, they are the ones to whom they report and share their perspectives and get their feedbacks. Of course, frequent meetings. I know it says twice a month, but that could be increased. I mean, in order to be more productive and more supportive to our city management.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
You are certainly welcome to join with us and stay in the council chambers as we invite the other applicants to present their answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I received a note that the applicant, Mr. John Torres, had a family emergency and had to leave, so he will not be interviewed this evening, which leaves us two more applicants to interview. The next applicant is Gerald Johnson.
Friends, journeyman, no, let me stop. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening.
Welcome and thank you for your application. I'll explain the process. Each of the applicants will be asked a question by the council. Each applicant has been asked and will be asked the same exact questions. And we will make our determination based upon the answers that you provide. At this time, we will turn it to Council Member Mendoza.
Hello, Mr. Johnson.
Hello.
First question. The state has passed over 100 housing bills since 2016. Of the bills that have passed in the last year, which is the worst one and why? And please elaborate on the bill and its direct impact on Brentwood residents.
I don't know the answer to which is the worst bill that has passed and its residents. What I would say is that as a council, as a person who's on the Planning Commission, my job would be to abide by all the laws that are passed by the state and abide by them. So there may be one that's bad or that we may perceive as bad, but it's our job to abide by the state laws.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Johnson. Could you explain your understanding, please, of current state and local laws as they relate to housing affordability, environmental equity, and CEQA compliance? And there's a second part to it, which I'll read now, and I'm happy to read them again, and you can decide which you'd like to answer first. How do you personally believe affordable housing should be implemented into local projects?
Well, I think that affordable housing should be implemented according to the zoning laws that we have that allow us to build affordable housing into the city of Brentwood, and that's how I think that we should do it. I think affordable housing is needed in Brentwood in order to bolster the community's employment, having people who can work and live in the city of Brentwood. So I think that's a good thing to have happen. I also think that I didn't study the laws that are applicable for, so I don't want to make it sound like I did and I'm commenting on some law or statute that has applied. But enough to say that as a planning commissioner, our job is to work within the laws that we have that are established. And so my job would be to make sure that the laws are abided by, that we work within the laws to achieve the plan that the city has for the residents and the city of Brentwood.
Okay.
And
sorry.
I was just going to say, and in terms of affordable housing, I think that's very important to have affordable housing in the city of Brentwood because without it, like my son who lived in Brentwood, he can't afford, and he has a nice job, and he can't afford to come back and live in Brentwood. So I think that businesses need workers that can afford to. We need to cut down on commute. So I think that's an important thing to have affordable housing. And so our job is to work within the city guidelines, within the state guidelines, the laws to achieve our plan for the city.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Hey.
Or morning. Good evening. If you fundamentally disagree with a project presented to the Planning Commission, would you have a problem approving the project if state law requires it and it complies with the general plan for the city of Brentwood?
So I kind of said, I said this a little bit, but we have to, our job as planning commissioners is to implement the general plan. That's number one. It's to implement the general plan, in the best way that we can, according to state laws and local laws. So we can't just go off on our own doing what we want to do, so to speak, if we don't agree with what the general plan is stating. Or, excuse me, if we don't agree, so if somebody comes and it fits into the general plan and it fits into the zoning requirements and it fits into those things, I think I would, be leaning towards doing what the general plan, what is required by the general plan and state and local laws.
Good afternoon, Mr. Johnson.
Good afternoon.
What would you describe as the top 3 priorities of the Planning Commission?
Now I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but I think our job is to, number one, make sure we're following the guidance of the general plan and falling into the general plan. Number two, and maybe that's number 1 or 2, but the state and local laws, we got to making sure that we're staying in compliance with zoning. We got to make sure we're doing things that are safe, keeping safety as a priority, keeping the tone and tenor of Brentwood in our decisions. So something might fall into the general plan. Does it look like Brentwood? Does it feel like Brentwood? Trying to make sure we do those type of things, even if it falls into the state laws, making sure I try to get it to feel like Brentwood the way we have been living for the last 20 some odd years that I've been living here.
Mr. Johnson, the last question is this. Please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
So we're responsible for growth of the future planning of the city of Brentwood and the growth of the city of Brentwood. So applicants come to the Planning Commission to get their projects approved, to get their projects approved to move forward to the city council. So our job is, again, we are like the city council helped to put together the general plan. We are trying to help spearhead that general plan and push it forward, moving projects along that meet the criteria set forth in the general plan, the zoning, as well as state and local governments, and also trying to help businesses and residents and developers develop in the city of Brentwood in a way that is consistent with the laws and the general plan that we've put forth.
Thank you very much. You are welcome to stay in here with us as we invite at this time, the final applicant.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. And the next applicant is Braden Hana. Good evening, Mr. Hana. Thank you for your application.
Good evening. Thank you all for the
I will
opportunity.
go over the process that we're going to be presenting you with. It is the same process that each of the applicants have experienced. Each of the council members will ask you a question, and we will make our determination based upon your responses to those questions. And I will turn it to Councilmember Mendoza.
Hello, Mr. Hana.
Hello, Ms. Mendoza. How are you?
I'm fantastic. The state has passed over 100 housing bills since 2016. Of the bills that have passed this last year, which is the worst and why? And please elaborate on the bill and its direct impact on Brentwood residents.
Okay. To answer the first part, of the question, a bill passed, I believe it was AB 2234. That was the bill that will, sorry. Oh, it is, that's right. It establishes quick timeline of projects to get done, and it makes it a lot harder for the decisions to be made because there is this harsh timeline, and the consequences will come if the timeline is not met. And was there a second part to your question?
Yeah, what's the direct impact on Brentwood and its residents of the bill?
Yeah, okay, so yeah, the direct impact would be obviously less time to make the decisions for projects and analyze them in an appropriate manner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Hana. Could you please explain your understanding of current state and local laws as they relate to housing affordability, environmental equity, and CEQA compliance? And there's a second part of the question I'm going to go ahead and read, but I'm happy to read them again. You can take them whatever order you'd like. How do you personally believe affordable housing should be implemented in local projects?
Okay. So the first part, my understanding, was it, could you repeat the first part of the question? Sorry.
Yes. Could you please explain your understanding of current state and local laws as they relate to housing affordability, environmental equity, and CEQA compliance?
Yeah, so as far as the affordable housing part of that question goes, it is mandated by the state and local that we have certain mandates to develop that include a certain percentage of affordable housing needed in certain projects. And then you said the environmental impact?
Yes, environmental equity and CEQA compliance.
Could you elaborate a little more? Sorry.
I'll just repeat that part.
Okay, yeah,
So
sorry.
could you please explain your understanding of current state and local laws
Okay.
as they relate to housing affordability, environmental equity, and CEQA compliance?
Okay, so for the environmental part, there's a bill that was just passed, I believe, September, that has to do with oil and gas drilling and making that process harder to be able to drill oil and gas. And that's great for the environment because for obvious reasons that have been proved by science. And then for the last part of the question was the zoning part, right?
The second part was, how do you personally believe affordable housing should be implemented in local projects?
Yeah, so we have to, obviously, there's inclusionary zoning, and we have to adopt certain land use policies that fit with the project being proposed. And we have to encourage adaptive reuse of existing buildings that are there already. And we could have funds that are supported by fees from developers to make it easier to get those the projects completed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great, thanks.
Good.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
If you fundamentally disagree with a project presented to the Planning Commission, would you have a problem approving the project if state law requires it and it complies with the general plan for the city of Brentwood?
If the project complies, as sitting on the Planning Commission, it's not our job to break the law. We want to comply with the law. We want to comply with the general plan. Those are the two most important things of being on the commission. And whether I disagree with it or not, if it complies with the law, and if it is within the general plan, then I would have to vote the way that I am supposed to vote.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Haina.
Good afternoon.
What would you describe as the top 3 priorities of the Planning Commission?
Well, number one is to review the applications as they come in, make sure they're compliant with the law. And as I just mentioned to Councilmember Orlemans, we want to make sure that they coincide with the general plan. We want to take into account what's good for the city, what fits in the city. We have to ask the question, is this Brentwood? Does this fit within Brentwood and what we're trying to do? As we know, we're almost at building capacity, so it's very important that we make the right decisions for the city. And then number three, I would say the Planning Commission's job is to advise the council on projects that come in. At the end of the day, y'all are the decision makers, and it is our job to advise you guys on certain projects that come in, as long as they fit the general plan and they follow the law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hana, the last question. Please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
Well, as I just mentioned, review applications as they come through, make sure that they're compliant with the law and they coincide with the general plan, and advising City Council on the projects as they come through.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, feel free to stay in here as we now discuss the applicants. And at this time, I'll open it up for council discussion. Who would like to go start the discussion? Okay, so we have 4.
Well, I mean, I like it. Like, it's interesting because we just had a meeting the other day where our council, I like the negotiation style of a couple of them because the law said we had to do something with a 5-unit thing. And our council knew that that's not what we wanted in Brentwood. So even though the developer could push it through, they found a way to negotiate. And that's what I look for is like, how do we finesse these laws so that, and we've done it on, they've done it on their planning commission and we've done it on our council. We don't always follow the law. We figure out how we make those laws work to us for us whenever possible. Because if you're just gonna read it black and white, then you don't need any of us, right? We need that human aspect, which a couple of the applicants mentioned, which I liked. And I know you're a lawyer, but
We don't break the laws.
I know we don't. Well, we don't break the law.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't break the laws, but there are times that we can actually work with developers and say, well, that doesn't work. Like, and they just did it, right? We just did it the last meeting, and we're like, that doesn't work for Brentwood. And they worked with a developer, and like, even though we legally would have to say yes, they explained to the developer why no, why it doesn't fit, and that's what I look for. I want people that are going to think out of the box. I heard some great like negotiation conversations, which I really enjoy because I think that's what we have to do sometimes, even though we don't meet with applicants. I don't behind closed doors. There's times that happens right here, and having that skill set I think is really important.
Let me just say, I wanted to make sure you don't turn into a soundbite of saying we don't follow the law. So that's why I said
No,
we don't break the laws. We just get creative about how we,
that right there.
yeah. So, anyway. I just want to say I thank and appreciate all of the applicants. I really feel bad for the other applicants who were not. We had, being this is my second time around, I think we had a strong pool of applicants this time around. And I thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your day. A lot of people don't understand that being in public service, it is a volunteer gig. Whether you get paid a minimum amount, it goes beyond what you get paid. So I know that being here tonight is a sacrifice for all of us to be away from our families. And I thank you for doing this for our city. That being said, you all make it difficult for us. I know we ask hard questions, as Councilmember Mendoza says. We ask really specific and hard questions about specific laws and about approach. What I do appreciate from many of the candidates was the restraint to be violative of what's currently our policies and positions and our laws in the state of California, and understanding that our hands are often tied when we sit here at this dais, or if any of you are going to be sitting here as a planning commissioner, that your hands will be tied even as a public citizen, a public servant, sometimes you have to make decisions contrary to your own personal beliefs. And so I do like that across the board, many of you all stated that you would follow the guidance of the general plan, and your understanding that we do have a general plan in place, the compliance with zoning. I think what I look for is just seeing if there's a general understanding of what it takes, and that we do have general plans in place, that we do have laws in place. All the other stuff comes along later on with the learning process. And the more that you sit up here, I'm sure that anybody who's currently on the planning commission or has been on planning can say that the longer you get here, the more you learn the process, as well as being on city council. But I do like a lot of what was said, and I think in my decision basis, I'm looking at you know, ability to understand laws, ability to really, I like a couple of people said, you know, listening to the one person said the heartbeat of the city of the residents, and understanding the priorities of the city. Other people said, you know, making sure we follow the guidance of the general plan, and then making sure that we make what one person said, the right decisions based on the laws and the zoning. So those are the things that I'm going to be considering in my decision making tonight.
And I want to say, first of all, I know this interview is you might all have great backgrounds, but interview process in general is difficult, knowing that you're being filmed and on screens across the city, and that we're all standing here or sitting here watching you. That's intimidating. So I want to acknowledge that, because I know that I would probably stand there and forget half of what I've learned in the time I've been on here. So it is a hard thing to do. My question was a bit complicated, and some of that's on purpose, and it wasn't that I was looking for an exact answer and there's a right or wrong. It was more that I wanted to see how people interpreted it and how they approached something. If they weren't entirely clear of what the answer should be, what would they interpret it to be? What would they try to share with me to show that they have some sense of, for example, of the affordability, what our priorities are, as an example. What I'm looking for is skill set, not necessarily the exact knowledge of what this work entails, but the skill set that can lead towards having a clear understanding and a basis of understanding that will help to make decisions like this. So, like I said, kind of a complicated process. It's not easy, but I do think there was some really good answers, and I would have to agree with Councilmember Pearson in that I appreciated hearing the people that talked about what's best for Brentwood is what's best. It's not necessarily what's always the exact word of the law, as much as how can we interpret that while staying within the parameters of the law to make sure that our residents are most heard and respected in what they want for the city.
Couldn't agree more. You guys made it as difficult as possible for all of us. And that makes me very proud to be a Brentwood resident, makes me very proud to sit where I'm at. If there was two people that stood out and just jumped ahead of everybody else, the process wouldn't be working as well as it is. So thank you all for the research you did, the work you currently do for the city, the support you currently show all the residents. It was truly a pleasure to hear you all speak of the general plan, speak of the laws in the city of Brentwood, speak that you're representing the residents of our city. That's what we all do. So thank you all, and thanks for making it hard on us.
I also agree. I in addition to knowing the particular information from the questions that were asked, I agree it's very important for our planning commission, and as a council person, it's important for our planning commission to be very fully aware of exactly what direction, first of all, the general plan says that we want to go, but how we can best navigate the laws that are constantly changing at a state level that, as it was said by one of the applicants, are constantly in flux. It's been very clear that the state has made a concerted effort in the last several years specifically to remove as much local control as possible on what our communities look like, our cities look like. And so being able to have a clear understanding of what we want the community to look like in the future and currently was really important. And some of you answered those questions very well. So yes, you made it very difficult to make this decision. At this time, and Margaret, are you ready? Amanda, are you ready? Okay. So at this time, I'm going to ask each of the council members, if you would, to provide me with the names of your top 3 candidates at this time. And
Yes, my first choice is Dr. Anita Roberts. And my second choice is Mr. Ahmad Tahiri, and I do not have a third choice.
okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Pierce.
Is sure if we were going in order or in order?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, Vice Mayor Meyer.
Thank you. My first choice is Dr. Roberts. My second choice is Ahmad Tahiri. And my third choice would be Gerald Johnson.
Okay, Councilmember Orlemans.
My first choice would be Gerald Johnson. My second choice would be Braden Hana. And my third choice would be Anita Roberts.
Okay, Councilmember Pearson.
My first choice would be, gosh, you guys made this really hard for us. It would have to be Anita Roberts. Let me look at my note. Give me a second. Gerald Johnson and then Braden Hyena.
My first choice would be Dr. Anita Roberts. My second choice would be Gerald Johnson. And my third choice, Braden Hana. Okay, based upon the application materials, interviews, and our discussion, your recommendations, we are going to go through this process to choose the top 2. Alexis,
Thank you. So the first column, there's clearly a majority in the column. And then the following 2 and 3 columns have the votes tallied up there. The order of business next, now that we have tallied all the votes, is for the council to vote on, recommend a vote on applicant number 1.
Is it by my motion?
And the city clerk would call the vote.
yes, could I get a council vote, recommended application for applicant number 1? Okay.
So based on the rankings, does that by the
Yeah.
city clerk, or is that, are you asking for the council to do it?
So what I'll do is I will recommend based upon these rankings.
Okay, thank you.
And I recommend Dr. Anita Roberts as the first applicant. And do I have a second? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
First and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Congratulations, Dr. Roberts. Thank you for your service. second choice, my recommendation is Gerald Johnson.
I second that recommendation.
Okay, well, actually, I need a motion.
Oh.
I'm making a motion for Gerald Johnson.
I'll make a motion for Gerald Johnson.
We have a first
I second.
and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Majority affirms. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, and congratulations for being appointed to the Planning Commission. I do want to thank everyone else for your outstanding answers and applications. And this is a process that happens every year. And so please, if you were not selected at this time, please understand that both the process is going to happen again in 12 months, and there are several other areas and commissions that you are able to serve on in the community as well. Okay, at this time, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
A second.
Can we have a first and a second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.